All right, you guys, so I'm gonna hit record, do our spiel, and then we will get moving. Oh, hello, Elizabeth. How are you feeling today? Good, love it. All right, oh my gosh, I always forget, when I wear slippery pants under my joggers because I'm cold, I'm like, this is gonna be an adventure. If I'm sliding all over the place, pay no attention. Anyway, hello, thank you so much for joining me for Pilates All Levels. My name is Audra, and today we're gonna use a purple squishy ball. If you're at home and you don't have access to one of these types of balls, that's okay. You can always fold a pillow a couple times and use that, or you can just say, no thanks, and not use the prop at all. As always, listen to your body. Don't do anything that feels bad or is contraindicated. And feel free to take breaks or modify as needed. With that being said, let's get started. We're going to start on our back, knees bent, feet flat. Put the ball in between your knees. And we're just going to take a second to check in. So go ahead and sway your knees just a tiny bit from side to side, like a little metronome. It doesn't need to go far. And then come back to center and just kind of see where your hips and sacrum ended up. And just notice if one side is hiked or if pulled up without judgment, right? This is a judgment-free zone. And if you need to, just kind of slide your hips up and down a couple of times to find center. And then relax your shoulders onto your mat. Nod your chin slightly and just kind of melt into your mat. We're going to bring one hand to our bottom ribs and one hand to our sternum. And we're going to start breathing. So big inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And again, inhale. And exhale. And just start to notice which hand is moving, right? So if it's your top hand, if that's the hand that's moving first, that could indicate that your diaphragm is not lowering enough to let you get a full breath. It could just indicate tightness in your secondary respiration muscles, right? So as you breathe, just notice and then see if you can allow that second hand, like the lower hand, to be our primary mover. Sending your breath low and wide. Last one like this. And now take your hands and bring them to the sides of your ribs, kind of the lower portion, right where your ribs meet your waistline. And as you breathe, allow your ribs to expand laterally into your hands. And then exhale, draw away from your hands. Just a couple more like this. A lot of times when we think about ab work or core stability, we don't necessarily always think about our diaphragm and how that interacts. So our deepest, most intrinsic core stabilizers are our diaphragm, our pelvic floor, and our transverse abdominis, all working together to help create and maintain something called intra-abdominal pressure. So if you think of your torso like a soda can, right? That evenness is what helps keep that tension. And that's what we're creating when we inhale. Now, when we exhale, think about dragging your ribs and hip bones together towards your belly button. And see how that still creates that pressure on the exhale. Two more. With the intention of pulling everything in towards your midline on that exhale. Last one. Hold that engagement, squeeze your prop. See if you can find a little bit deeper engagement when your inner thighs kick on. And then squeeze the prop again. See if you can find that deepening of that engagement. 2 more. Last one, we're going to find that same engagement and hold. Now dial your hip bones towards your face so you're letting your lower back relax. We're coming into an imprint. Rock back to neutral and relax. It's kind of a 4-parter, right? Engage, rock, rock back, relax. So we're trying to mobilize our lumbar spine a little bit, as well as getting a little bit of deep abdominal activation before we begin. 2 more like this. Last one, hold your imprint. Good. And then try to deepen your imprint. And even more. Really dialing your hip bones back toward your face. And then press your feet into the floor. Press your arms into the floor if it feels good for you. Coming into your first bridge. Now check it out, right? See if your hips are dropped, or if your weight is on your neck, if you're lifting from your armpits. Think about opening your throat a little, keeping your weight more on your shoulder blades as opposed to your neck. And it's okay to kind of keep that tailbone tuck. Now melt through your throat, your sternum, your ribs, your sacrum, until you come back to neutral. Now let's try that again. Find that abdominal engagement. And then we're pressing into the floor to find our calves, our hamstrings. You're pressing in with your hands to find your triceps. If you're like me and you like to internally rotate from your shoulder, you can even keep your palm to the sky or facing each other. And then melt and roll down. Yes, we're trying to find some articulation here. However, if you have some sticky spots in your spine and you have to kind of like brace and use force in order to get that articulation, instead think of melting, right? Let the tissue of your back melt on the way down. We have 1 more here. Peeling up and melting down. Go ahead and interlace your hands behind your head. Now your hands are just a hammock for your head. Nod your chin slightly and then spiral your elbows forward so they're in your peripheral vision. If you think about your shoulder blades kind of drawing around your ribs, that's going to help you. So inhale here and just exhale, come into your first chest lift. Don't really overthink anything. Just kind of see where you are today. And now check out what your low abs did, right? If they kind of domed, it's not bad. It just means your rectus is doing more work than your transverse. So come down. Think about hollowing out through the front of your body first, and then curl up. See if that changed the sensation in your body. And then come down. Now maybe envision curling up and over a beach ball and see what works the best for you, right? Just a couple more. Exhale, curl. Letting your neck be relaxed here. Keeping your gaze forward. Last one. Hold. Now, as we breathe, if we're breathing up into our ribs, like towards the sky, it's actually going to create an environment where our head lowers. So as we hold, I want you to try to send your breath down so it can help you maintain your upright position. We're just holding and breathing, right? And it's harder to do than it seems like it should be, yeah? Yeah. Now bring your hands forward, push them into an imaginary surface so you get just a tiny bit more curl or activation. Hands come up, interlace and hold. See where your shoulder blades are. If they're down, see if you can curl forward more from your ribs, and then slowly lower down. Give me just a couple more like this. Exhale, start that curl, hold. Hands come forward, push them into that surface. You can bring them up and then hold. So we're gonna hang out and breathe for a second. Trying not to let the head lower. And slowly come down. We get one more. Good. Bring it forward. And then hold. Now just squeeze your prop and relax a little. Squeeze the prop and relax. Now, if your feet are so far out that it's causing internal rotation at your femurs, I'd like you to bring your feet a little closer together. And then also press your feet down and imagine dragging them back towards you so your hamstrings kick on more. Good. Curling your collarbones forward. 3. How's everybody's abs? Great. Yeah. 2. Last one and lower. Nice. We're going to bring one arm to the sky. Think about your shoulder blade melting down to the ground, but without retraction, right? Now, as we curl up, our hand is just going to come up with us and then slowly lower. 2 more like this, right? Think about that arm just staying nice and in the socket. Hold. Now we're not reaching from our arm independently. We are rotating and seeing where our hand goes, and then come back. Rotate, just see where your hand goes, right? So that's why we're not moving it independently. Now, initiate that rotation from your hand. See if you can rotate a little deeper, right? Good. 2 more. Keeping your opposite hip heavy. Last one. Come all the way down. Keep that arm elevated. We're now just going to go immediately to that rotation. So head down, inhale, exhale, rotate. Good, and then come back down. See if you have to adjust your spine each time. We're hoping to get that rotation through the rib cage. Good. 3 more. Good. Using that breath here. 2. Everybody feeling that oblique a little bit? Yeah. And other side. So just support your head with your hand. Let that chin be gently nodded. Bring your arm to the sky. Now, once again, if you're reaching from your shoulder, I'd like the shoulder blade as just flat and heavy as you can get without retracting, right? It's a relaxed shoulder position. And just come up, keeping your shoulder basically in the same place. Good. Couple more like this. And remember, breaks are great, right? Last one, hold. Now, untuck your tailbone, and we're going to rotate. Just see where the arm goes. So this time, we are not leading with our hand. We're leading with our ribs. We're just seeing where the hand goes. Right? Couple, maybe don't count. And on this next one, we're going to use the hand to see if it can help us. So think of that pinky finger leading more than the thumb side. Trying to maintain that height if you can. If you need a break, take one. 2 more. Last one. Come back, head comes down. Now we're going directly into that rotation. Inhale, exhale, see where you go, and back. And the arm is doing a couple things here, right? It's letting you know where your body's trying to go. It also is offloading just enough that it's a little bit more sustainable, right? 2 more. Last one. Nice job, everybody. Come all the way down. Go ahead, take your prop out from between your knees. We're gonna slide it underneath our sacrum. So if it's on your low back, it's gonna be too high. I'd like it right in between those cheeks on that flat triangular bone. Now, once again, if you're at home, a couple pillows folded is gonna be great. All right, so once you've got that, keep in mind, it should almost feel like it's gonna shoot across the room, but then not quite. So just once again, find kind of a neutral pelvis. And without changing the shape of your spine, on your exhale, think about the fronts of your abs pulling down so low that you kind of try to pop the ball. And then relax. Now make sure your glutes are not on, because it kind of lifts you off of it, right? So kind of try to pop the ball or squish the air out of the pillows. Everybody feel how those like deeper abs kick on a bit more? Great. Give me a couple more here. Last one, hold. Now push down so far that it's almost a fight to keep your feet down. We're gonna push one foot into the floor, allow the other leg to float up. Push that foot back into the floor so that hamstring kicks on, and then allow the other foot to float up. And again. So if you tend to have very talkative hip flexors, what I would like you to focus on is the push down with the abs and the push down with the foot. Your focus is the hamstring of that down leg and your deep abdominals. And just notice if you can like focus more on the hamstrings, maybe your hip flexors won't be as talkative, right? Strong hip flexors are really important, but they're also a neurologically dominant muscle, which can mean that they just talk a lot more. And sometimes they want to bully other things out of doing the job. Now bring one leg at a time to tabletop. Squeeze your inner thighs together as if you're trying to pop a balloon. Now your tabletop might be up here, it might be down here, whatever works best for you. Think about those thigh bones connecting to your ribs and let your toes start to point towards the ground as you take your knees away from you. And then squeeze the inner thighs to let the legs lift. Now, I don't really mind if your feet touch the ground if you have really flexible hip flexors. However, touching the ground is not ultimately our goal. It's about stabilizing the weight of our legs going away from us, right? So I personally get more out of hovering my feet off the ground for a couple seconds and then allowing them to float up than I do going past that range and bringing them to the floor. One more. And allow them to come back up. Now flex your feet for me and imagine pushing them into an imaginary wall, right? So your glutes kick on a little, yeah? Push one foot away from you, reaching it as far away as possible, and then allow it to fold other side. So if the wall imagery doesn't quite work for you, maybe imagine I'm standing next to your mat. Hello. And I'm going to push against one of your feet, and you're just going to push me away. And then I'm going to push your foot back, and you're going to let me. So on the way out, you're using a little bit more force, and on the way in, you're using a little bit more relaxation. If you'd like more challenge, bring your arms to the sky. That's just going to challenge your balance a little bit more. And if you'd like more challenge than that, opposite arm reaches overhead. Couple more. And last two. Go ahead, bring both of your feet to the sky. Now, instead of pushing your feet down, push them away from you a couple inches, flex and bring them up. Now, if fingertips to the sky is like a little too intense, bring your hands back down, pushing your feet away, and they can lower a little more, and then up. If this does not work for you, bend your knees, push them both to a wall and back. Your knees do not need to straighten if you're doing the bent leg position, right? We're making sure our ribs don't pop and our back doesn't arch, right? It's about connecting our thighs up to our ribs and using our torso to transfer that force from upper and lower body. Two more. And last one. Go ahead, drag the legs in and hug your knees towards your chest. And you can come off of that prop. Just take it from side to side a little bit. Good. Now go ahead, bring your feet down to start. And arms are coming out to the side. So if your shoulder wants to roll forward, see if you can allow that shoulder blade to be flat. And we're just gently pressing our knuckles into the ground. Now close your ribs, let your knees start to go to one side. It's less of a big stretch and a huge rotation, and more about just seeing where your first point of resistance is. On your exhale, bring your awareness to your waistline. That's what's going to drag your legs back, not the inner thighs. And then other side. So if you arch here, that's your back trying to help rather than your obliques kicking on more. So instead, lengthen that hip away from your face. And then on your exhale, we close our ribs, drag it back. Now maybe feet on the ground is just a little too easy. And that's okay. If that's the case, bring your legs to your tabletop. Still squeezing those inner thighs together. Keep your knees together, right? They're not shearing. Lift one hip as the other hip starts to be heavy. And then exhale, drag them back. Keeping both shoulders on the ground. And then if that's a little too easy, hold. And then you can extend your legs and then drag them back. Bend your knees again. Take them up and over so you're finding your end range, and then you're challenging that range by lengthening your lever, right? You can always keep your legs long, but a lot of times our nervous system will stop short of what we would eventually accomplish by starting with that shortened lever and then lengthening it. It's up to you though. Whatever feels best for you and your body is great. Last one. Go ahead, bend your knees, bring your feet to the ground. Extend one leg away from you. Now, push your heel into the ground and then relax. Now, if you did that with like squeezing your glute, see if you can just gently allow your glute and hamstring to activate without having to clench. And then relax. Press down and relax. One more. And then interlace your hands behind your head, elbows forward, come into your chest lift. Yeah. You can always be like, I need a little assistance, bring your hands forward, it's fine. Now we push our heel down and then push it away from us. It's almost trying to lever us up. And then press it down into the ground, push it away, keeping your knee soft. If your knee straightens to get that foot up, that's actually your quad doing the work as opposed to your abs. So knee stays soft, push your foot away from your ribs. Yeah, good. Two more. It's harder on the abs if you don't straighten your knee all the way, isn't it? Yeah. You're welcome. And as you push that foot away, you can start to take half a pound of weight out of the leg, maybe. If this doesn't feel okay on your back, don't do it, right? You can always put your head down and just think of reaching it away without taking weight out of it. Two. Last one. Slide that foot in, other side. We're just gonna push down. You can always bring your head down for a couple. So you push and relax. Driving that heel straight down, just letting that glute start to kick on. Two more. And then hands behind the head to curl forward. Now, as we do this, push down and then push away. Think of that away, hoping to pull your chest up, right? And once again, if you just straighten your leg to get that heel up, it's that quad kicking on rather than your abs having to stabilize you more. Good. Just taking half a pound of weight out. I don't need your foot to float. How's this side feeling? Great. Good. Two more. Last one. Slide your other foot out long. Now, if just having your feet out long pulls on your back, that is an indicator that some of your hip muscles are tight, right? And if that's the case, bend your knees slightly. See if that alleviates the discomfort. If it doesn't, put your head down. See if that alleviates the discomfort, okay? If not, keep a knee bent, no problem. Otherwise, we're going to switch legs. We're going to push one foot away, maybe allow it to hover half an inch. And then the other side. And feel the difference from side to side, right? If one side you're like, yeah, I got this, but you're squeezing your quad, and the other side is much harder, but you're not squeezing your quad, it just is an indicator of your body's movement strategies, right? Push it away rather than up. Two. Last one. Now, regardless of whether your head is up or down, we're bringing our head down, trying to find the same move. But now notice how you don't have your superficial abdominal muscles to help you out, right? So it's a different sensation. It's kind of a different move. Two more. Use your breath. Don't worry about your foot lifting. It's about pushing and just taking like a quarter of a pound of the weight out, right? So now we're challenging your transverse abdominis, possibly even your multifidus. Good. Now, hands back behind your head. Spiral those elbows forward, curl forward. And if it's appropriate for your body, push both feet away. Maybe they hover, maybe they don't, I don't care. And no, push both feet away. If you feel all of a sudden your back lift, close the ribs, go back to one foot at a time, okay? Good, couple more. Now, if this feels good and you're not experiencing any back discomfort, You can always try it with the head down. Much like what we did earlier, where we pushed our sacrum into that ball to get our deep abdominals to kick on, similar motion, but let those ribs draw towards that belly button as well. This isn't much of a move, but if you were doing teasers or rollovers or classic hundreds, being able to lift your legs off the ground without overusing your back is really important, right? Last one. Nice, everybody. We're gonna come back into our chest lift if it's appropriate for you. We're gonna bring one leg in, push the other foot away. Rotate towards that front side, and then switch. It's a crisscross variation. You can always just keep the foot on the floor, or you can kind of push it away a little bit. If having your head off the ground isn't working for you, you can always keep your head down. And in order to help with those obliques, you take your opposite arm, push it into that leg. Push the leg into the hand as well. Making sure you're not just pulling from your shoulder, but that serratus. Good. Couple more. And 2. Last one. Good. Bring both feet down. Hands come by your side. Now, we're going to make sure that the shoulders are not rolling forward here. Reach your fingertips towards your feet and just start pumping your arms. And just notice what happens if nothing is engaged. Notice how your ribs are probably going to flare. Maybe your hips are going to move, right? Now, as we do this, on your exhale, think about your hips and ribs all pulling towards your belly button. Notice how stable that is. Now, inhale deep and wide, so everything is filling at once. Notice how much more stable that is. And then on your exhale, draw everything together. Now, maybe this is where you are with your hundreds. Great. Maybe you're like, I'd want my rectus to help me more. Great. Come into your chest lift. Maybe you're like, cool, but I'd like my legs away from me. You can always be in tabletop. You can always start to extend your legs on an angle, or if pushing your feet away felt great, you come up as you push your feet away. And we have 5. Relaxing your neck as much as possible, looking towards your feet. 4, 3, 2, hug your knees in, head comes down. Rock from side to side. Now push your shins into your hands and use your lats and serratus to match that. So you've got a little bit of pressure. Now lift your chin and your chest. You're just going to start a baby rock. And maybe that rock forward and back starts bringing you more upright. Good. Now, scoot to the front of your mat. Now, couple things. If rolling like a ball is not comfortable, instead do what you just did, right? Just to get a little bit of movement, you can kick your legs if you need to. Otherwise, with rolling like a ball, we're going to think about our lats pulling down, come up onto your toes, right? Curl your abs away from your thighs. Now making sure we're not coming up onto our head or our neck, right? We've got to tuck our chin, keep looking at your feet, and just inhale, keep looking at your feet. Exhale, keep looking at your feet. Yeah. Nancy, widen your knees for me. Yeah. And then again. And don't try to go as far. I want you to just curl your tailbone towards your face. Much better. Yeah. Good. Now, knees together is great. Knees together is a little bit more challenging if you have a tight lower back. Knees apart just gives you a little bit of space to work with, right? Don't worry about how far back you're going. as long as you're not going onto your head or your shoulders. Now, if you're like, cool, rolling like a ball was fun, but no, it would be more fun, open leg rocker. You can always do open leg rocker. With open leg rocker, shoulders come down, lift your collarbones at the top. Then tuck your tailbone, use that as your initiator. And then you restack. You all right? Yeah. Okay. All right. No, you're fine. I just wanted to make sure it was you're watching, not your head. And then up. Good. And again. Ah, and maybe you don't make it up each time. That's okay. We got 2 more. Hey, gang, guess why this is important? 3 guesses. Sorry. No, not walking for once. If you fall, you are not as likely to hit your head because you're already in practice of tucking your chin and getting your head out of the way. Yeah, knees bent, feet together. Anyway, that's why I think it's really cool. And it's just kind of fun. All right. Now, reach your feet away from you. We're going to do some roll-ups, you guys. So if there are props that you need for successful roll-ups, use them. Otherwise, we have a million different options. We're going to reach our hands forward. Now, notice how if you're just reaching your hands forward, you're probably reaching from your hips. That's great. But now keep your hips in the position they're in. Lift your ribs in and up as if somebody you like is hugging you. And then curl your tailbone towards your face. Oh, kind of like when we just did open leg rocker? Yes. Lay your head down gently. Let your arms come up. Now on the way up, don't think of up, think about forward. We roll forward, okay? So all of that work we did at the beginning, right? Where we were breathing into the backs of our ribs to hold this, and all of that work we did when we pushed into that imaginary surface to get more height, use that to help you get enough initial height that you don't have to fling, right? So close. Yeah. Now, other things that could be contributing, right? Maybe your hip flexors are tight. When mine are really tight, I can't get up without bending my knees. So maybe try bending the knees, just a little. See if that helps. If it does, that just lets you know what you're having to work against, right? Couple more. And if that's still too challenging, hey, guess what? You can rock up like we just did. Last one. And come all the way to seated. Now, if you're seated and you're like, oh man, my hips or my hamstrings, or I just can't sit upright, that's fine. You have some options. Sometimes sitting upright is the most challenging thing. So thinking of just kind of pulling your tailbone back to root into your sits bones might be enough. Or you might want to bend your knees slightly. Or you can even bring yourself into a seated or propped up position by folding your mat or sitting on a yoga block, okay? And I'm gonna turn and face so I can see all of you. So sit up as tall as you can without force, right? We're not arching, our ears are up. We're just gonna put one hand on our thigh, other hand behind us, and just kind of look. It's not a huge rotation, just see where you go. Now, big inhale. And without force, just nice long exhale. See if your nervous system allowed you to get a little bit more range. And then other side. And notice if one side just naturally has more range than the other, right? And then come back to center. Now we're going to do a couple just fun exploration things. So give yourself a hug and let yourself slouch, like, ooh, brr, I'm so cold, right? Now keep this position of your shoulders We're gonna rotate to one side. Oh, you got stuck, huh? And then rotate, you got stuck, huh? Now come back. Now I want you to find that military posture where you're squeezing your shoulder blades together. No, same thing, getting stuck, right? Because when we rotate, one shoulder's supposed to come forward, one shoulder's supposed to be able to retract. So bring your hands to your shoulders and just think about squeezing your shoulder blades together and then letting them come forward. Your elbows will probably point forward a little and then retract and forward. Good. And just see if one shoulder feels a little different than the other. Good. Last one. Now, think about one shoulder protracting, one shoulder retracting, and then see if that combination gets you a little bit more ease of motion when you're trying to rotate. And then other side. Yeah. Couple more. And this is one reason why rotation should be primarily coming from our thoracic spine. So if you think about walking, one arm comes forward, one arm comes back. One arm comes forward, one arm comes back. Obviously, we're not walking quite like this, hopefully, but it's like you draw the arm back and then it kind of creates a pendulum effect, right? Last one. And then we can bring our shoulders into a relaxed position, arms out. And if you want your feet wider, it's great. We're going to rotate to one side, flip your back hand, dive forward, and then lengthen through your ears, coming all the way up. Rotate, we're going to dive. So it's rotation, flexion, hold, extend through your ears, rotation, extension, and up. Couple more, and up. 2. Last one. Lengthen and lift. And see if, as you do this, you're able to find just a little bit more ease of motion with your spine. Good. And up. Dive. And lift. Nice job. Come on to all fours. Now go ahead and just notice like where your body naturally wants to be, right? So maybe you're here, and in which case I would suggest bringing your hands underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. Now, if you would like to be on your forearms, that is totally fine. Lengthen through your ears and just find your abs, right? At the beginning, we found that deep abdominal connection, trying to find the same thing. Slide one foot away from you, push it into the ground, and then fold it in. Other side. Now, if your hip wants to dive forward or rotate down, think about that glute being what pushes the foot into the ground. Your abs helping to stabilize you. 2 more. And of course, if this is challenging for you for any reason, you can always use a wall to push into, especially as we start lifting our foot, right? So maybe you decide you want to lift your foot, and maybe you don't, right? If you're lifting your foot, it's more of a hover than a big high lift, right? So it really shouldn't be any higher than like a 90-degree, right? Unless you can absolutely keep your spine still, right? 2 more. Last one. And slide one foot out, push it into the ground. Other foot can come to meet it. Yeah. So think of one long line from the crown of your head to your tailbone, and then another line from your tailbone to your leg. So it's not where you're gonna sink. Good. Nice. Gorgeous. And breathe. Now, if it's appropriate, you can bend one knee underneath you and other side. If it's not, don't worry about it. We have 2, trying to keep your hips still and stable, right? It's exactly what we just did before, except now the leg is moving. 2, last set. Knees down, press yourselves into a rest position. Feel free to roll out your wrists. Take your hands up and over to one side, push your hips away. And then other side. All right, you guys, let's do a little bit of side lying. Are you so excited? I am. Go ahead. We're going to use our prop for a little bit of support if you want. If you don't want, you don't have to. Now, think about your top hip bone pointing forward. It's almost going to roll forward, but not so much that it like causes your ribs to come with it. And then allow that hip to kind of lengthen away from your face, lifting your bottom rib up. So we're trying to find that nice stable spine from below and above. If you've ever done like suitcase carries at the gym, this is kind of the same in that we are not letting our body collapse. Okay? Yeah. So slide your top foot away from you. Good. And just bring it behind you a little bit. And we're going to paintbrush it up a wall. So let your foot actually dangle. Don't let your hips move. Squeegee it down. Now, a lot of times, if our TFL likes to do more work than our glute, our body does a couple things to try to help. One, it opens the hip and lifts like this, which is all TFL, right? Or it internally rotates and brings that foot forward. So I'd like your knee in neutral or biasing a tiny bit towards an external rotation. Good. If you're like, well, what's an external rotation? The knee will point gently up. 2, everybody feeling that glute kick on a little? Great. Hold this last one at hip height. And we're just going to bring the foot back from the glute up and around a little bit. Drag it through an imaginary like mud substance. I'm like, I don't know. Good. And without bracing, right? So we're trying to not allow our ribs and hips to do the work. We're trying to allow that thigh bone to move freely in the socket, get that glute to help work. And then we reverse. But we also don't want to brace, right? The bracing posture is a great strategy for when we're having to like lift something way too heavy, but we don't need to necessarily apply that in life, right? Last one. And then keeping that leg slightly behind you, bend your knee. Good. If the knee came forward, that's all right. Just push into an imaginary surface. We're just going to lift and lower a little bit. How's that hamstring? Yeah. Just a couple more. 4, 3. Now hold it up. And we're just going to let the foot only lift. So we're going into internal rotation, neutral, foot only lower. And then foot only lift. Come back to where you were. And then let your heel come down even more. Yeah. Good. How's that feeling, everybody? Interesting? Yeah. I think that it can be very telling, at least in my own body, right? So when I get to neutral, I'm like, great. As soon as I try to go past neutral, it's like my leg gets stuck because that TFL is tight, right? So just be aware. It gives you information. Last one. And bring your knees together. All right. We're going to extend our legs on the angle and rotate back. So you're on your greater or off your greater trochanter. You're on like the fleshier part of your buns. Now, hand comes to the ground. Exhale, push from your obliques. Keep that bottom oblique lifted, hover your legs. And then back. Don't look down at your feet, look straight ahead if you can. Yeah, good. And back down. So this is another one where if your back is helping, it feels vastly different. That's why our feet are forward. We're rocking back a little. Good, good. Two more. If you're pushing to help, get the work from that serratus, right? The front of your armpit and those obliques. Two. Last one, hold. Pushing up a little bit more with that bottom inner thigh for 4, 3, 2, 1, and we get to do the other side. You guys okay? You all were just like, yeah. If you need to shavasana, it's fine. All right, so same thing. Think of that suitcase carry where we don't want to collapse, right? So we want to lift that bottom rib, send that top hip away, extend the foot. Now, hip rolls forward just a little. The foot comes back in space just a little bit. I'm going to paintbrush up the wall without letting the rib collapse, right? So you're pushing the foot away from you, thinking of that bottom rib lifting, yeah? And once again, if you're like, well, I feel the front corner, make sure that you're not internally rotating, make sure you're not having that foot forward. That's why we're beginning in hip extension. Good. Few more. How's that feeling, everyone? Great. Good. Bring your foot back behind you a little bit more. Don't, like if you glance, you shouldn't actually be able to see your foot. So if you glance down at where you're like, oh, my foot, if you see your whole foot, especially your knee, bring it back in space more. 2, last 1, bring it back to center. Drag it back, up and around. Drag back even farther. Using your breath. Nice job, you guys. And this is not about a big move, right? We can always make it bigger, but we're trying to kind of isolate our posterior chain, right? 2 more. And reverse, right? It's all about the backward motion. Because we tend to be able to be really good at things where we can see our limbs, right? We tend to be much better at reaching in front of us and having control that way rather than behind us. 2 more. Last one, hold. Now bend the knee. If it came forward, see if you can push it back a little bit. Holy hamstring, right? Just lift and lower a little. Good. Brush up and down. Few more. Good. Relaxing your shoulders. Yeah. 2. Last one, hold. Now just let the foot come up. You're internally rotating. Let it come back to neutral. And then just let the foot come down, externally rotating. And then letting the internal rotation happen. Neutral, external rotation. Good. Now, if there's a reason that you're not able to internally rotate, right? Like say you have a labral tear and your doctor's told you, don't go into internal rotation. Don't, right? You don't have to. But in general, a mobile hip is a healthy hip, right? So that's why we're trying to get multiple ranges as opposed to just one. Last one. Come back to center, extend your legs out on that angle, close your ribs, rock back behind your sits bones, push into the floor to lift your feet a little bit. Now, it's about trying to find that engagement through your center as opposed to just lifting your feet, right? Good. Think of a mermaid, right? And we just want to brush our feet away. Good. 2. Last one, hold. Hold it up. Use that bottom inner thigh to help you for 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going to roll onto our stomach for a second. Moving the prop away. Now shifting your hips from side to side. Just let your low back relax. Now, I want you to just see what your hips are doing, right? Are your hip bones heavier than your pubic bone? If they are, let your pubic bone be a little bit heavier. We're going to suction cup our hands to the ground, drag our elbows back, push our hands into the ground, and just start to get a little bit of upper back extension and slowly lower. Now, it's less about getting up high and more about lengthening. It's kind of like if you were being shot out of a cannon and then getting a little bit more extension. 2 more. Shoulders come down, press, curl. Only go into a range that feels good for your body and just notice where your extension is coming from, right? More times than not, we have like 1 or 2 sections that really like to do the work. So if you feel pinchy or compression back here, that is an indicator that those are the vertebrae trying to do all the extension. So that's why we're also trying to suction cup to pull forward and then come up. So we're trying to get extension through our whole spine. Last one. And then you can bring your hands forward, flip your palms to face each other, press one hand into the ground, other hand floats, opposite leg floats, and back down. Now, if you're like, it doesn't feel great in my shoulders to let that hand lift, you don't need to. You can always just keep both arms down. Couple more. Think of that collarbone rotating, good. Last 2. Last one. Still trying to keep that lower back relatively stable. Press your hands into the ground. Now, roll your shoulders back, press onto your knees, roll back into your child's pose. Hands come up and over to one side, push your hips away. And then other side. Come all the way to standing. We're going to end with just the tiniest bit of balance work. Now, bring heel to toe as if you're on a little tightrope. And maybe this isn't going to be very challenging for you. Great. If you're like, it's too challenging, bring them just a little bit wider. And then close one eye, look over the opposite shoulder, and switch. If you accidentally make eye contact with someone, it's fine, be friendly. And back, good. 2 more, we're challenging our ocular and vestibular systems. Last one, and then switch. So maybe this will be your easier side. So close one eye, look over the opposite, making sure we're not locking out through our knees. We're squeezing our inner thighs together, heel and toe are touching if possible. Good. Couple more. And last one. Good. Then bring your feet together. Push down into the ground, float one leg up, and just see how that feels. Maybe it's super easy. Maybe it's not. If it's really easy, try closing your eyes. And then open your eyes, other side. Making sure that you're actually using the floor as a prop, right? So if you have to hold on to a wall or a couch or something, that's fine. But if you actually use the floor, it'll help stabilize you, right? As opposed to just kind of existing on top of it. Root down into it a little bit. 2 more breaths. Bring your shoulders to your ears. Drop them straight down. You guys killed it today. You did so great. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks. How do you guys feel? Good. Thank you, Yvonne.